Welcome to the Happy Disruptors Podcast. If you're a creative thinker with an unconventional approach to your industry, you just might be a happy disruptor. Join your friends at the Great Outdoors Foundation for honest conversations about tackling critical issues like conservation with an uncritical disposition. If you like to smile and get things done, this is the podcast for you.
Hello, and welcome back to the Happy Disruptors Podcast. I am Kaitie Hartman.
And I'm Hannah Inman.
And today we are joined by the fabulous Ruth McCabe with Heartland Co-Op. Ruth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited to be here with you guys today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I also don't know where I'm supposed to be looking. Am I supposed to be looking at you or at you?
Yeah, both. Either one.
Did I do that right?
When you look at the camera, like it's like an office moment.
Yeah.
You know, where you're like,
direct to camera.
I'm
if you
so
really want to
about
punch
this.
a point.
I hope you keep this in, by the way.
We
Don't get rid of
will.
this.
We will.
This is how I operate in the daily. Imagine being my employees. All right. So anyways, my name's Ruth McCabe. I am the conservation manager for Heartland Cooperative, which is a large ag retail co-op. You guys know this, but your audience might not. Ag retail cooperatives are cooperatively managed by the farmers who purchase products from them. So our farmers are also our owners. And we do everything that a farmer needs. So if a farmer needs fertilizer, seed, fuel, feed for their livestock, whatever, we provide it. Heartland is one of the larger co-ops in the state. So we have about 80 locations, depending on the time of year, across central Iowa, into Nebraska, and down into Texas.
oh, wow.
Yeah, so we're big. I could rattle off a bunch of other statistics for you, but we're not here necessarily to talk about Heartland, although my company's amazing. I think so because they haven't fired me yet. So I lead a team. I lead an amazing team of conservation agronomists. So I'm an agronomist. I'm a crop physiologist by training, actually. I worked for Iowa State and University of Minnesota as a researcher before I jumped into the private sector to get into conservation. But I did my graduate degree at Iowa State. And I lead a team of agronomists. So everybody on my team is an agronomist in some capacity. Some of them are also farmers. And our goal and my team's mission is to help farmers adopt farming practices that reduces the loss of soil or nutrients from their farm fields. So we keep it very simple. We don't get into like the weeds on stuff like, we do get into the weeds. Anyway.
Puns are already starting.
Yeah.
We love it.
Pun intended. We don't necessarily get into the weeds on things like wildlife habitat or conservation for conservation's sake. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But since we work predominantly with farmers, we just want to focus on keeping our farm fields productive and sustainable for the future and providing some level of ecosystem services back to the environment at the same time in the form of improved water quality. So that means reduce nutrient loss, reduce sediment loss. So we keep it simple. And my team is amazing. There are 4 of us, soon to be 5 of us. We're hiring a conservation agronomist this winter. And we spread across the central part of the state of Iowa. We haven't moved into Nebraska or Texas yet. And we just hustle. And we're constantly hustling and getting conservation practices on the ground. And that ranges the spectrum of conservation from infield. You'll hear me say this a lot, so I'm going to define it for your listeners now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So infield conservation farming practices, or infield CFPs, because your girl loves acronyms, are things like no-till, cover crops, split nutrient application, or precision nutrient application. These are things that a tenant farmer or a farmer, period, can manage, right, in the field. Mm-hmm. And then you've got edge of field or perennial or permanent CFPs, conservation farming practices, that are things like buffer strips, filter strips, grass waterways, saturated buffers, bioreactors, oxbow wetlands, nutrient treatment wetlands, sediment basins, wascobs, which is a sediment basin. Anyway, my point is landowners tend to have control over the decision to implement those kinds of things, not necessarily the tenant farmer. Mm-hmm. And so we may or may not verge into this, I don't know, but people don't really know that a large portion of the people who farmland in Iowa do not actually own it, right? So like over 60% of our farmland is rented farmland. It's farmed by somebody who doesn't own it. So like, that's why I differentiate between those two types of conservation practices, so people understand that there's some things a tenant farmer can't make the choice about. And that's where we need landowners to come into the conversation. Anyway, I've gone on long enough.
Well,
That's
this is
fantastic.
fantastic because I think the one thing about the Great Outdoors Foundation and people that listen to this podcast is although we have a lot of strong partnerships in ag, we also have strong partnerships with those outside of ag. So the explanation that you just gave is incredibly helpful. Could you just go a little bit further and talk about the role of an agronomist or a conservation agronomist with a tenant farmer? So how they're oftentimes one of the most trusted advisor that a farmer can have.
Yes, absolutely. So at a co-op or at an ag retailer, you're going to have a sales agronomist usually, or like a nutrient agronomist or fertilizer agronomist. Just like there's different kinds of doctors, okay? Yeah. Like there's a gynecologist, there's a internal medicine doctor, which probably has another name that I don't know, and then there's like heart doctors and stuff, right?
Yeah.
There are different types of agronomists. So a co-op might have somebody who specializes in fertilizer recommendations, and that's all they do. And they'll have, sometimes the larger ones have agronomists who specialize just in herbicide, pesticide recommendations and scouting and crop disease and weed and pest issues. In Heartland's case, we have sales agronomists and we have conservation agronomists and we have some precision nutrient agronomists. So our sales agronomists are the ones who help tenant farmers with recommendations around fertilizers. They do soil tests and give them recommendations about fertilizers. They give them recommendations on pest and weed issues. And if there's a chemical need, they'll make a recommendation about a chemical need. And then there's our precision nutrient agronomists who provide precision or split application advice. So they really drill into and focus on nutrient needs of a field because fields are massive, right? Like a farm field could be the size of 10 football fields, right? So like one football field of a farm field is going to have different nutrient needs than another. Anyway, so, and then there's conservation agronomists, and we specifically focus on conservation practices. So we go to a farm field, and we're not looking at a farm field through the lens of where are there pest or disease issues. We're looking at a farm field through the lens of, okay, you've got a gully forming here. There's a solution, and the solution is X. So you should put in a grass waterway here, or you should do this upslope, which will reduce the velocity of the water moving down this slope and will, eliminate this gully that's forming. Or, you have this pest issue and you've been no-till for 30 years. You might need to go through judiciously with some vertical till just to kind of chisel it up a little and disturb these slugs that have started to eat all of your wonderful organic matter that's built on the soil surface. Like as a conservation agronomist, we're going to make a recommendation that helps a field still maintain its integrity, but also helps the farmer still be productive, right? So anyway, we're looking at a field through the lens of how can we make this field more sustainable.
So conservation agronomists are relatively new at the co-op level. Can you talk a little bit about why Heartland is investing into conservation agronomists, what you see the benefit or Heartland sees the benefit for its farmers and owners? What's that role?
Yeah, so we get this question a lot. Almost every time I talk with somebody, it inevitably comes up in a conversation, which is, what's in it for Heartland? You asked it much more nicely than that. Thank you. But we get this question a lot, and it's a great question. There's lots of different ways for me to reply. Since this is a very informal conversation, I will just say snarkily that, not to you, but like in general, the answer to that is, I think in the conservation space, ag retailers have traditionally been seen as one of the causes of the water quality problems. And I think that that's a fair criticism. I'll just say this. I think that's fair. There's parts of it that aren't necessarily objective, but it can be a fair accusation. So my response to that is, if we're a part of the problem, we definitely deserve a right to be a part of the solution. Now, that's my snarky response. But also, 6 years ago, Heartland, so we had a former vice president of our agronomy department whose name is Dave Koppes, and fantastic guy. And he had this dream of moving Heartland in the direction of having agronomists who could specifically provide conservation guidance. So he really saw Heartland getting involved in conservation more than it already was. Now, Heartland was an original founding member of the Ag Clean Water Alliance, which has been around for 25 years now, since the inception of the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force at the federal level, and then since the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. So ACWA is an organization of ag retailers and ag industry that want to work towards improving water quality, et cetera. So Heartland was one of the founding members of that organization, and Dave wanted to up us in the game, right? So in 2020, they put out an advertisement for a conservation agronomist. I saw the job posting, And I thought, I don't know that this co-op, because I had the same misconceptions about co-ops at that point in time. And I was like, do they know what the word conservation means? I'm going to go to this interview. I'm going to interview with these people, and I want to know. So in my interview, I was like, you guys do realize that there is a little bit of a conflict of interest here, maybe, right? I mean, I'm going to be potentially talking some of your customers into reducing their application of nutrients, or I'm going to be talking them into putting cover crops down or changing their management plan or switching to in-season nutrient application. Like, some of this might be contrary to what your sales agronomists might want to see happening. Isn't that going to be a problem? And they had the best response, which was, it was good enough that I decided to take the job when they offered it to me, even though I asked them that question in my interview, which I thought for sure they'd be like, there's the door, have a nice day, lady. They didn't. Which was, we have customers who are demanding this knowledge. They want to know how to use conservation practices. Our sales agronomists are fantastic at helping them grow the most perfect crop, but it is unrealistic to expect people who spent 4 to 6 years getting a degree in a very specific subset of information around growing crops to then pivot and suddenly start offering guidance in a career field that they know nothing about. And they also have a ton of things to do. So asking them to now do the job of 3 people instead of the job of 2 people, which they're already doing, it's unfair to them. And it has made us realize that our sales agronomists aren't happy trying to do all of this, but our farmers also aren't happy. And we're losing business. We're losing farmer business to the snake oil salesman who will tell them whatever they need to tell them in order to get their business. Even if it means that they only get 75% of that farmer's business, they're getting that farmer's business where they didn't have it before. And then we're losing all of that farmer's business.
Interesting.
Wow.
So I thought that response was pretty compelling. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I took the job. But Heartland is getting into this space because the only way to figure it out is to just dive into the deep end of the pool and swim to the other side. So, I mean, I'm helping them figure it out. We have, I think, figured it out pretty good because I've got a team now of soon to be 5 agronomists who are working with me. And we've expanded into so many different spaces in conservation. I think we really have found a good niche for ag retailers. But the only way to figure it out is to just jump in and figure it out.
Yeah, that's exciting. So you've spent most of your or all of your career in the conservation space. What trends have you seen over time and what has surprised you the most?
Yes. As far as trends go, I think the thing that I'm starting to see more than anything is like this, especially in Iowa, there is this buildup of energy around certain individuals who are movers and shakers in the conservation space. I'm a mover and shaker, certainly. I make people laugh and I swear a lot. So that alone has made me a popular public speaker. But there are other people within agencies and county and state levels who are just movers and shakers. And I think when Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy specifically was released like 15 years ago, you didn't have the people, the intellectual scaffolding, if you will, in place yet. And it's taken the last decade to get all the right people on the chessboard who need to be where they are within the agencies that they're in. And I would rattle off some names. Me in Heartland Co-op, John Swanson with Polk County, Susan Kozak and these other amazing people, Mike Naig, obviously, within Iowa Department of Agriculture. You guys with Great Outdoors Foundation, right? There's all of these pieces on the chessboard that are there now that were not there 15 years ago. And there's this energy around what we're all doing that for me is really exciting. And when I hear the criticism sometimes from people who are like, well, it's been over a decade and nothing has changed from the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. I'm like, cool. We literally just spent a decade building the scaffold around the house. Now just shut up and let us paint it.
Right.
Like, let us paint now, because I promise you in another 10 years, you're going to see differences. The amount, the rate of change of the types of practices that have been getting implemented over the last 5 years alone is mind-blowing, and people aren't seeing it because I think IDALS specifically is being too, they're being too modest. IDALS, you're being too modest. You guys need to start owning this. Anyway, I hope they see this.
We'll send them that clip.
Yeah, we'll send it.
Send it to Mike Naig.
I will. Don't worry.
But people aren't hearing about it. But anyway, I work in the space. And so the trend that I'm seeing is there's this energy when John Swanson or I or you guys or somebody, who works on the batch and build team at Iowa Department of Ag, for example, Tanner Pulse or Emmeline, or just these people who are now working in the space, or Shane with the wetland team, they walk into a room and it's like people start to know who they are, and you can see them go, oh, so-and-so's here. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I want to go talk to them about XYZ, or I saw this thing happening and I wonder if it was them who worked on it. So there's this energy that's building. Now, the second part of your question, can you say it for me again?
What has surprised you the most?
What has surprised me? Thank you. What has surprised me is that there are these movers and shakers, and they are not where you think they would be. So like when I started, I will tell you, I had a very different, when I was in graduate school, I did a research project with, my graduate degree was on biofuels for bioenergy. So like co-firing coal with switchgrass or miscanthus. And I looked at the nutrient profile of these as feedstocks. Anyway, super boring. I published a manuscript. If you want to read it, it'll put you to sleep in like 2 pages. Not even 2 paragraphs. You'll be out like a light. You're welcome. But anyways, so, but what's funny about that is part of my research I did in partnership with the USDA and some USDA ARS researchers, and some NRCS folks were also a part of that research. And what fascinates me is a decade later, I took on this role at Heartland, and I actually communicated with some of the same people, but I had gotten married in the interim, so they didn't know what my new last name was. And it was amazing how different I was treated at Heartland Co-op than when I had been at Iowa State University. And there is this sort of lassitude or resistance to change in the traditional agencies that offered conservation services that has shocked me in the last 5 years. And then at the same time, I have seen these people coming out of agencies where I'm like, wait, you care about this? I mean, I guess they probably think the same thing about me. So I can only assume that people are like, this Ruth person, you work for Heartland? I get that question a lot. You actually work for Heartland Co-op? Like Heartland Co-op. So I'm assuming, like when I see these people who are doing amazing things and they're in these weird agencies or these weird organizations, and I'm just like, this is awesome. Let's go get stuff done. Heck yeah. Let's just like take over the world of conservation, man. Let's take them down one wetland at a time, one field of cover crops at a time. And it's super exciting, but they're in places that you don't anticipate them being. So I guess I'll just end this by saying, like, I have learned to set aside my preconceived notions. The agencies that I thought would be champions for conservation have, in many instances, not been. And the organizations and agencies that I would have never anticipated being champions have been. So now I'm just kind of like, don't care, gloves are off. If you want to get stuff done, you want to get conservation in the ground, let's play ball. And if you don't, get out of my way.
Yeah, it really is such a diverse coalition of organizations and individuals who are working on solving the problem. And I think you referenced earlier, we've been building the scaffolding around this issue and how to address it, making sure we have the mechanisms in place to be able to address it. It wasn't a problem that was created overnight.
No.
There shouldn't be an expectation that it would be solved overnight either, correct?
No.
So I heard you actually speak on another podcast, Ruth, where you were talking about Iowa being sort of like an example to other states. Tell me a little bit about where your optimism comes from, and how do you see opportunity for Iowa to make changes in the next 10 years that will set the scene for how the Midwest addresses conservation?
Yeah. I'm particularly excited about this. It's like my secret dream, like 20 years from now, to have somebody in like Washington, D.C. be like, man, Iowa, that dark horse, they just came out of the rear and they're leading the country now in like greatest change in water quality. Yeah, right? It's my secret dream. Yeah. So, and I know we're going to get there. And so we are weirdly, maybe it's not weird. This conservation agronomy movement was really, well, it was born in the Midwest, but one could argue it was really born in Iowa. And I know there's going to be some people who listen to this who are going to be like, you're wrong. But I said what I said. So I feel like it was born in Iowa.
Listen,
and like,
half of it is just claiming it. So just go with it.
Yeah. We have all learned
it was
that
born in Iowa.
We've all learned that if you just repeat a lie long enough. Anyways, I don't think it's a lie. But okay. So this conservation agronomy movement has really had traction, and I don't know about the other people who work in the conservation agriculture space, but I can only assume they're having the same experience that I'm having, which is I have been invited to come to Minnesota Minnesota to talk with some folks from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture about our conservation agronomy program. I've been invited to come to Wisconsin, and I have done these things. I'm just listing off the places I've gone to speak about this. The Chesapeake Bay on a couple different occasions, several states in the Chesapeake Bay. North Carolina most recently had a wonderful conversation with some folks who work in source water protection in North Carolina, and they're all saying, like, we are seeing what you guys are doing, and you're like having success. What is in the sauce? I mean, what are you doing? What's the secret? And so they've invited me to come and speak, and I am an open book. I am transparent as heck about this because I'm so passionate about seeing other people have the same success that we've had. There is literally no reason you cannot take the model that Iowa has built around conservation agriculture and repeat it in another state. You absolutely can. And if anything, we have a ton of hurdles here that are ridiculous. And I know that in other states they have different hurdles, but they don't have the hurdles we have. So it's like, man, you ought to be able to do this anywhere. And so I am just a proselytizer for this movement. So that was the first part of your question about like why and who, is looking to us as an example. And then what was the second part of your question?
What opportunities for growth over the next 10 years do you see for Iowa to really set us up as a leader? Like what are the steps that have to happen to get to your secret dream?
Yeah. So I think we have figured out, we're still working the kinks out of it, but I think we figured out how to get at perennial or permanent forms of scaling, rapidly scaling perennial or permanent forms of conservation. There are a lot of very significant federal agency, bureaucratic sort of roadblocks that we are navigating, which is very frustrating, but we're figuring that out. And I think in another 10 years, it's going to be a game changer. You are going to see, well, you're already seeing saturated buffers, bioreactors, grass waterways, filter strips. I mean, you're seeing those just explode right now because of the model we've built around the batch and build model, which we may or may not talk about. Folks can Google it. It's called the batch and build model. Look it up.
And real quick, I'm just going to say something because there is a lot of conversations about the batch and build model. It is a delivery mechanism.
Yes.
And you can put any practice in that.
Absolutely.
But it's modernizing the delivery mechanism.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. Yes. So there's that. And then there's wetland. We're scaling up wetlands and we're figuring out how to remove some of these bureaucratic roadblocks that exist for wetlands, or we're figuring out how to navigate that process much faster. So we've really gotten to that. My concern is this, and you had asked a question in there that I had an answer to, but I'm going to talk about it now because I feel like this is a good space to talk about it. Do we want infield CFPs? Do we truly want infield conservation farming practices to take off? Because if we do, we really need to have a come to Jesus about this. We are not supporting those practices at the level we need to support them at. Full stop. It ain't going to happen unless we make it financially worth it to a tenant farmer to do it. We don't have soils. Like I've traveled around the world. I literally have. I'm not bragging. I'm not bragging. I literally have. I am a 2022 Nuffield International Farming Scholar. Ooh. It sounds really important. But in reality, what it is it's like being a MacArthur Fellow for a very niche industry that nobody knows about. So Nuffield International Farming Scholars, again, Nuffield, look it up, Google it, is an organization. It's a global organization that picks one or two scholars from a country, from like 80 different countries every year to study a particular conservation topic, to study an agricultural topic of interest. I studied conservation agriculture. I still am studying conservation agriculture. You remain a Nuffield scholar for life. So I have traveled to 16 countries and counting, and I'm still traveling. Wow. I'm trying to target major grain producing nations, and I do research in those nations, and I ask qualitative questions. I put together qualitative interviews with some rural sociologists from Texas A&M and Iowa State, and then I go to these countries and I do these interviews and I ask questions and I compile my data. I have published one manuscript already. I'll be publishing another one here in a year. And what I have found out is this. There's countries all over the world that use in-field conservation practices like no-till and cover crops, and it turns out they do it not because it's the right thing to do. My favorite phrase. I say that looking at the camera too. It's not my favorite phrase. Anyway, they're not doing it because it's the right thing to do. They're doing it because it makes money for them in the short term. Why does it make money for them in the short term? Because they have really crappy soils, or they have really crappy climate, or they have a combination thereof that makes it so that practice is an immediate game changer for their farm. They are immediately getting yield, whereas before they weren't. And this is why it was widespread adoption in those places. So Let's talk some examples real fast. Canada, Australia, Brazil. Why are they almost 100% no-till? Because it holds moisture in the soil to the point that they can skip a fallow season. And for those who don't know what fallow is, it's basically not farming so that you can conserve enough moisture to grow a crop the next season. If you could grow a crop every year as opposed to every other year, don't you think you would just adopt the practice? Absolutely. So it was farmer-led in all these places. Okay. Here in Iowa, where we have some of the world's best soil, yes, we have the world's best soils. The heaviest, highest organic matter soils pretty much in the world, where we get a ton of rainfall. Oh my gosh, so much rain. So much rain.
Especially right now.
Oh my gosh, I'm swimming. Where we get so much rain, our soils are heavy and wet. Practices like no-till, cover crop, especially switching all your nutrient application to spring when you have like a window of 6 days to get all your crops planted. These things do not pay off. They do not pay off for farmers. I don't care what anybody says. And there is research that says, if you use no-till and cover crops, 15 years from now, you'll start to see, gains and your soil will be healthier and you'll make money. If you're the owner-operator, if you're a tenant farmer who's on a year-to-year lease and you have no guarantee that you're going to be farming that land in 3 years, why should you sacrifice yield to adopt a practice that's going to probably cause you to lose money in the short term? So my point is this. We talk a good game about wanting to see cover crops and no-till become standard and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if we're going to do that here, then we need to pay for it. So we need to decide, do we want to pay for it? Do we want to make it really pay? Do we want to make it what I call the bird in the hand as opposed to, so I like to say a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? Farmers in general operate under the mantra of, I'm going to go for the obvious bird in the hand, the obvious profit, rather than some speculative future potential gain that may or may not be realized by me. We need to make the conservation practice the obvious bird in the hand. Okay. So if we're going to do that, we need to pay for it. Nobody wants to hear that. And so that's my thing that I think we need to focus on is, do we want in-field practices?
So are current payment options enough? I mean,
no.
Okay.
Not at the state level. And that's not to be a dig. I love you guys at Idaho. Okay. That's not a dig at like Iowa Department of Ag. It would cost a lot of money to make it financially viable. EQIP is a federal program. Now, EQIP is one of the most popular programs for farmers to apply for, tenant farmers and owner-operators alike. They love EQIP. Why? Because EQIP pays anywhere from $70 to $120 an acre. Now you're talking. Look at the Chesapeake Bay. You know how much they pay per acre for cover crop adoption alone? Anywhere from $50 to $100 an acre to adopt. Guess what? They've got like 70% adoption rate of cover crops over there. Wow. Why? Because it pays. Hand over fist, it just pays.
And is that a state-led?
No.
Is that state by state?
They have the Chesapeake Bay, I'm not going to name it correctly, the Chesapeake Bay Fund, which is fed into by multiple states. So they have the money in a way that Iowa does not have the money, right? Wow. But we do if we could utilize our federal dollars. So this is something I'm going to grind this axe until I lose oxygen and pass out. That's not an analogy that makes sense. Whatever. But like my point is that we have all this federal money conservation dollars that have been allocated by taxpayers for conservation, right? And it's at the federal level and it's held in the middle of a table under a cloche and we can't touch it. And I'm like, that should be given to the state to allocate as it sees fit. And we should be able to use that to incentivize in-field CFP adoption. We have figured out how to do edge-of-field and perennial adoption. We've figured out how to get to landowners and incentivize the heck out of it. There's less of that to do than there is of in-field practices, and we need it all. So there's a part of me that's like, we need that money so that we can start to truly pay for it. EQIP is a great example, right? Because it pays so well, but it's impossible to get into as a program.
Okay, let's pause and talk there.
Sorry.
Because no, because you mentioned a lot of really great information that I feel like is helpful to unpack for just a lay person who's not familiar with the ag sector. So we've talked about in-field, edge-of-field practices. We're really good. We're getting better at edge-of-field and figuring out how to do batch and build. And those are more permanent or semi-permanent structures.
Yep.
The in-field, we're talking about annual costs, sometimes even more than annual if you're implementing multiple practices. What incentives exist for a tenant farmer versus a landowner, and why is that incentive structure kind of as it stands weighing against the tenant farmer implementing those practices?
So there are federal programs, namely EQIP and CSP, that could pay a tenant farmer specifically to adopt in-field conservation practices. They're next to impossible to get into for a variety of incredibly stupid reasons, mostly bureaucratic in nature. but also to be fair to the folks who work for the NRCS, the paperwork for each and every single one of those applications is a mountain high, and they can only pick so many people. It's really dumb, and I think most of them would agree that it's pretty stupid. So, yeah, so it's just impossible to get into those programs. So there's federal, right? Now state, I mean, it would be exorbitantly expensive to support in-field CFPs at the level that we need it supported. So Iowa Department of Ag just doesn't have enough money to support these practices at the level that I think they should, or that the number that I think they need. Right now, you can get $10 per acre in the first year of adoption, only up to 160 acres for no-till conversion. That's nothing.
And that's conversion.
That's just
not
conversion.
People that are already doing it.
Yeah. That's conversion. And it's only in the first year, and that's not even going to cover the cost of machinery retrofits in order to actually switch to no-till. It's a drop in the bucket. And then you can get up to, if you're a repeat cover cropper, you can get $20 an acre up to 160 acres for cover crops. If you're a first-time user of cover crops, you can get $30 an acre up to 160 acres. There's a ton of research that's been done on this. I have quoted a lot of it in my own manuscript, but people can look it up if they want. There's a lot of research here in the Midwest that shows that when a farmer in general adopts a conservation farming practice like no-till or cover crops, because of lost yield, machinery retrofits, and for that matter, just the learning curve that they're going to deal with in the first 3 to 5 years, they can expect to lose anywhere from $50 to $80 or even $100 per acre to be in the red on adopting those practices. Wow. So $10, $20, that's not enough. That's just not enough. Cover crop alone is going to cost you $40 to $50 an acre to when you buy the seed, have it applied, and terminate it in the spring. I mean, there you go. That's $40 or $50. So like $20, it's not enough. Now again, I'm not digging on the Iowa Department of Ag. We are one of 6 states in the union that even has state level cost share for conservation at all, right? There's the Chesapeake Bay and there's Iowa, right? So, I mean, we are very forward thinking in that regard. It's fantastic. What we have is incredibly important to adoption. And I think Iowa State recently, I don't know if it's recent, but Iowa State did an analysis on the impact of our state level cost share on conservation adoption, and it has been extraordinary. Without that cost share, we would have far less. So we absolutely need it, but it's not enough. It needs to pay more.
I was with Iowa Soybean yesterday and their research team, and I think they quoted to me that 15% of Iowa has cover crops right now, which on the average is extraordinary. Yeah. But we need much more to scale the problem that we currently have.
Yeah, and again, it just comes back to like edge of field and perennial and permanent conservation is so incredibly important. And Iowa is number 1 in the adoption in the nation of perennial and permanent conservation practices. People don't know that either. So we're already number 1, and we're scaling it. We're scaling it right now even yet. So, I mean, that's amazing. But if we want to see marked changes in our water quality, we also need to get in-field practices to become far more popular than they are. And I'm sorry, most people run a business and they're not, and I hate the phrase, you have to do it because it's the right thing to do. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago where I asked the audience, I just asked for volunteers. I was like, please raise your hand if I came to you and I said, hey, look, I need you to take a hit to your income every year, $25,000 maybe, $25,000 or $30,000, just lopped off your income every year, but it's the right thing to do, and it's going to make the world a better place for everybody around you. You're willing to do that, right? Show of hands in the audience who's willing to do that. Nobody raised their hand. What a shock, right? I mean, but we look at farmers and we're like, need you to take a huge loss on your income every year because it's hashtag the right thing to do. And I'm like, that's crap. These people run businesses. I mean, some of them, yes, wake up and the environment for them is the number 1 thing on their give a shit-o-meter. Oops. Well, sorry. It's like the number 1 thing for them, right? Some people. Most people do not function that way. Their children, their family, their faith, their business, their whatever is their number 1 thing. And no, taking a loss, taking a hit for society is not at the top of their list of things that they're going to do. They're not going to chop their income a third just because it's the right thing to do. So, especially
when we have such volatility already within the market. I mean, just looking at corn and soy this year, right? And what was it? 2022 was the most profitable year for farming. And we still had, over half of our small and medium-sized farmers were not making an income. We're not, they were in the red. So when you talk about that third, I really appreciate you bringing these to light, Ruth, because I think that you are one of the most passionate conservationists.
Super passionate.
And how many times, especially this last, 3 to 4 months, have we heard, well, if you would just.
If you would just.
And, you know, XYZ. And, it, you know, my response is, if it was that simple, don't you think we would already be doing that?
Yeah.
And I think that this is starting to illuminate, and I hope everyone watches this, because I don't think many people understand the day-to-day realities of trying to navigate this system.
It's great.
And especially when, and this is something that we've talked about in many different episodes, when the way that we do conservation is built from the 1930s Farm Bill.
Yep.
Which was really addressing soil erosion.
Yep.
Not the issues that we're dealing with today.
Yep.
And agriculture has evolved to such a way, but we're still trying to solve it in these ways that weren't built for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were skinning, well, I shouldn't make that analogy. We were trying to solve a far different problem back then, which was just our soil was literally blowing away. And I will say that like our soil erosion rates have plummeted compared to then. I mean, we still have, I think, in my humble opinion, I still think that we have an unsustainable soil loss rate, because I don't think any level of soil loss is sustainable, but I'm just a hardliner about that. So, but I mean, let's be realistic here. Like our soil loss rates now compared to in the 30s are a fifth of what they used to be. So, I mean, we really tackled that, and for the most part really succeeded in reducing our soil erosion. But like you just said, that same approach needs to it needs to change. We're trying now to convince people to just take a loss to their incomes for the sake of society, and it's like, nah.
So I'm so glad that you brought up the economics of the issue. That leads really well into the next topic that I want to make sure we cover, because it's super cool and it's addressing some of the issues that we've talked about, both in the delivery and the funding of conservation practices. And that is the sustainability linked loan that Heartland partnered with CoBank on. GOF played a small role in that and helping with staffing costs. And then EDF also provided expertise on some of the KPIs. So talk to us about how that is changing the way conservation is integrated into the business model at the co-op level, and then for the farmer as well.
Yeah. Okay. So how much
just
longer
a
do we have?
light topic.
Yeah. Just like, I mean, this is buckle up. This is going to take like 20 minutes.
I want, this is like, I think this speaks to something that you spoke about earlier, and it's these unlikely partners and unlikely spots, right? So CoBank is a financial institution in the farm finance world. They lend mainly exclusively to co-ops.
Yep.
So we have a financial instrument in there. We have Heartland Co-op, an ag retailer, which we've already discussed how, unlikely that is for conservation. We have the Great Outdoors Foundation. We're probably the most likely partner as a conservation organization. But then you also have the Environmental Defense Fund that's helping to validate and set key performance indicators. All right. So I wanted to lay that foundation. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So the first thing I'll say is that that whole process was, it was educational. I'm a very opinionated person. So, I'm sure you haven't picked up on it. I'm sure you haven't picked up on this, but I'm very opinionated. And so I already had ideas, like a lot of my thoughts now regarding how we need to accelerate private lands conservation, period, but especially among like tenant farmers. A lot of those opinions had begun to form years ago, and then were strengthened by my research that I did as a Nuffield scholar. But the sustainability linked loan and that whole process of creating that and working with Environmental Defense Fund and Great Outdoors Foundation and CoBank and Heartland, that there were many lost nights of sleep trying to actually build that partnership. And there were many times when we were like, we can't, this isn't going to work. We got to walk away from this. There were times when I definitely did not think we were going to get that off the ground, but everybody cared enough about trying to make it work that everyone just kept pushing. And there were times that I was like flagging and losing my energy, and then EDF would step in and they'd be like, we got this. And then there were times that EDF was like, we got to tap out for a bit. And CoBank or Great Outdoors Foundation were like, we can help with this. Like, we can do this. We can draft this contract. That's fine. So, everybody came to the table in different ways throughout the entirety of forming that, in a way that I'm not blowing, smoke up your ass. It was one of the most, when it was all said and done, it was one of the most amazing experiences I'd ever been a part of professionally, because it was like, wow, that's what real partnership looks like. Holy crap.
Yeah.
We all carried the weight of that thing, and it was a thing. It was a behemoth, and we carried it. So I love that about the SLL. Now, what's interesting about it is that my thoughts around incentivizing agriculture and making it financially worth it to do in the short term were what fueled my passion to go after an SLL, because I wanted to follow the same model for a retailer. And we were no different than a farmer, right? Like, we're not going to do something if we're going to lose money on it as a retailer, okay? Yeah. So it's like, let's create an internal financial incentive at Heartland to go after these goals and to incentivize leadership to support the conservation team so we can continue to go after these key performance indicators and hit these numbers so that we can get a reduction in the interest rate on our operating loan. That is a direct win for the co-op, and that's a win for our team. And it's a win for our farmers, because it means my team gets to continue to grow and expand and offer more conservation services, right?
And their members, they're member owners of the co-op, so they get it in their bottom line.
You
their
got
check.
it. Ding, ding. You got it, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just a win across the board, right? So I wanted to follow that model. And what I've learned from it is, yes, that model works. Surprise, right? Like, yes, that model works, because now our leadership is very invested. They were invested before. They loved what our team was doing, but now they're really invested because their banker is asking, like, how's your conservation team doing? They hitting those KPIs? They hitting those KPIs? Like, I've had conversations with our CFO that, like, I never would have anticipated sitting down and having a conversation with my CFO on a monthly basis about where our team is at and what we're doing, right? Like, that is not something I would have anticipated. And him and his team being intimately aware of what our team is up to and doing. They come to our events. They come to our field days.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right? Like, it is amazing. Like, all the way up to our CEO, like, all of them, they will plug into our team now and follow us and encourage us and support us and listen when we have ideas and thoughts. And it's not that they didn't care before. They did. But now we have this model, this incentive that only strengthens that concern and that caring from them. So, I love that. I love that is what grew out of the SLL, and it only strengthens my opinions around how we have to incentivize it in a way where there is a short-term benefit. That's how humans function. The one thing that I've realized from having the SLL is that we had to, like, arbitrarily set these, like, not arbitrarily. We looked at past performance, and then we would set these very aggressive key performance indicator, these very aggressive metrics and goals for our key performance indicators. And we had like 8 different things that we were focusing on at first, and then we had to narrow it down. CoBank picked 1, we picked 2, that kind of thing. And what I've realized is that it's tough because our team is just constantly hustling. We're always trying to sell, always trying to go after more, always trying. But we're held back sometimes by various, like, we're held back by bureaucratic barriers that are erected without us realizing that they were going to be erected. And so things that are outside our control can sometimes slow us down. So it's like we're hitting our goals, but we're not hitting all our goals at the same time. And so I think some people are looking at this like they're like, well, it's the first SLL in the United States between, CoBank and an ag retailer, and the goals are probably really easy, and you're probably going to hit your KPIs every year. And it's all like, nah, we're not.
You're rooting for
it's
it,
actually
for
really
sure.
flipping hard to hit these goals. And we're hustling and we're doing good, and I'm so proud of my team. No matter what we do, it's a win. We are getting conservation on the ground. But, I will say that, like, there are some levels of difficulty where it's like things that happen outside of our control can prevent us from hitting a goal, and it's frustrating because it's like we would have hit that goal, but we're held back by something we have no control over. That's been a real lesson learned.
And that's probably because the KPIs that you have are dependent upon stacks of funding for your farmers,
leveraging
right?
State or federal programs. Yep, absolutely.
Right. So it's cover crops, edge of field practices, and then some education.
Outreach. Oh, I want to talk about that real quick. Here's another thing. I know I seem like, she's really funny. She likes talking to audiences. Like, she must love doing this. Of course I do. I would love to come speak at your next event. Please reach out. In reality, our outreach was pretty abysmal. And so CoBank was like, you guys need to do more outreach. And I was like, we don't sell outreach. We sell practices, CoBank. We get physical practices in the ground. And they were like, cool, but you also need to like go and do outreach and speak to the world about what you do, because otherwise nobody's going to know about what you do. We have expanded our outreach so much because we have an outreach KPI. So like, and that, admittedly, they were right, has brought visibility to what we do and our industry as a whole in a way that we would never have achieved had we not been forced to engage in that space.
So I totally identify with what you're saying because, on some grants with some large funders, outreach was always a key component, and I just wanted to do the work. But now being on the other side where we're trying to build these pipelines of practices, right? We hope that this SLL won't be one and done. We hope that we keep building and achieving these really great metrics that benefit the state, that benefit the region, that benefit the country. but we need others to know what's going on. We need to build the interest, and it's a key to move it from the early adopters to, more mainstream, is to create that piece. So I have turned around on that, but in the beginning when you're so slammed with work and just trying to climb out, but it's building that pipeline of willing landowners and producers that want to do these things. So I'm with you on that, on that KPI.
I actually did not. That's the other funny thing. People will be like, you guys probably picked outreach KPI as your thing, and then they picked these other physical. I'm like, it's the other way around. Co-op was the one that wanted us to go out and talk to people. We just wanted to do the physical practices. So but it's good. It's like character building. Puts hair on your chest. I don't know what the time limit is on this, but I'm almost gonna keep going. So let's.
No,
perfect.
We
do not have
I feel
3
like we
hours for
could.
this.
I wish that we had 3 hours. We will for sure have you back, Ruth, because I feel like we have just barely scratched the surface on some of these really creative interventions and ways. I think you said it perfectly when you were like, "This is hard." This is really, really hard. Every single partner that was engaged in that initiative had a lot riding on it. And it took a lot of investment. It took a lot of iterations. And that is the case with any complex issue, right? It's not, if it were just a simple flip a switch, that would have already been done. So,
But in reality, you guys want to go long form, right? This is just, we're going to keep going. Somebody's going to bring margaritas in. We're just going to plow right into the evening, right?
So we're gonna wrap things up with our Let's Whiteboard It segment. And you, Ruth, actually are getting a leg up on all of our other guests, because I'm going to turn one of our main discussion points into our Let's Whiteboard It. If there was one thing you could change the general public's mind on about conservation and agriculture, what would it be?
Ooh,
and you got to write it.
I have to write it?
You have to write it there on your whiteboard.
Or draw it. We actually really love drawings, diagrams.
Orange. You can't read the orange marker.
It even coordinates with your shirt. We didn't do that on purpose.
Oh my gosh, you didn't. Are you sure? Orange, by the way, in case anybody wants to know, orange is my favorite color.
Oh, fantastic.
That's why I wore orange today, because it's my favorite color. Okay, you want me to write it? How am I gonna, how much, oh my God.
What'd you do to these cats?
I don't know. I think it's the humidity.
Chair,
they're really.
Your yellow chair is not going to stay yellow.
Okay,
forever.
So what'd you say? What was, repeat that question.
If you could change listener or the general public's mind about one thing related to conservation and agriculture, what would it be?
Do we get to explain what we write?
Yes.
Okay. I can't draw a picture for this, I don't think, because I'm not that good of an artist. So
I don't even know what to.
All right. Exactly. While Hannah is wrapping up, just a reminder that you can listen to the Happy Disruptors podcast every Thursday. We drop a new episode. Make sure to like and subscribe, and follow the Great Outdoors Foundation on all of our social platforms. Ruth, do you want to kick things off with your... Oh, I got you right in the middle of a sip of tea. So sorry. You can finish that off.
She says it's tea.
Do you want to kick us off with your diagram or your answer?
Yes. I don't know how to draw this, so I just wrote it out. Do I expose?
Yes.
Okay.
You can absolutely. You can expose it.
Do I expose this? It's been a long day, y'all. I came here from the state fair, so I want everybody to know that I've been baked by the sun for a few hours. It says we are all in this together. That's what it says.
Okay, great minds.
I didn't know what
you drew a picture. I was drawing. This is my poor drawing of a lot of people together.
Yeah.
I thought it was
together.
People with twins.
Listen, I'm not in the art industry.
You can. Do you even know what that that is.
Okay.
That's saguaro. That's a cactus on the bottom. That's Saguaro National Forest.
House.
That's Tucson.
Corn.
Oh, it's corn. I'm sorry.
House into corn into city.
So I wish people understood the food system that we have in the United States to understand the complexity of solving this issue. So you have the corn, which is obviously great visualization. That's the co-op, the grain bins.
Okay,
love it.
That's the factory of where, our food is processed. And then I was going to do a grocery store and I didn't know how to do that. So a house of where it ends at. And, how our demands of consumers and the needs of what we need in different types of food and how that is driven what is planted and how that all contributes because it is such an interwoven and connected system.
Yes. And I would add to that like it's this concept of we're all in this together from my perspective. And I'm having this conversation with audiences all the time is it is so easy to be like, well, we are innocent bystanders with no role in this whatsoever. And it's all their problem. So they need to fix it. They being whoever the bad guy du jour of the moment is. Right. And it's like, no, actually, we're all in this together. You all get into cars and drive them places. You all use air conditioning, which requires coal burning, which impacts our air quality, right? Like we are all humans and we all consume stuff. And at the end of the day, I know how, hey, you know what? I know how to solve our water quality problems. I know how to solve our conservation problems. Just get rid of people. People laugh at that, but it's like, no, that's our problem. And it's not just farmers. Right. There are cities with millions of people in them that consume all kinds of resources in a way that's completely unsustainable. There needs to be some level of solidarity around this where it's like, no, we are literally all in this together. We all have to give a crap. You can't just back away and go, well, I'm not causing that problem. I don't do that profession, so therefore I don't need to be concerned about the solution. Yeah.
And how can you, if it's possible, think creatively about how you can participate in the solution? Because I think that's been a theme throughout this episode is it's a whole lot of unlikely, I won't say bedfellows, but we're all like, it's just a really kind of interesting menagerie, but it's going to take something unusual to fix such an extraordinary problem.
Absolutely. I've definitely taken solace in the people who have come to me from the strangest places being like, hey, I hear you're doing this thing and I want to do it too. And I can bring this to help you. And it's just like, where the heck did you come from? Cool, great, get on board. Let's do this. I mean, I'll play ball with anybody as long as you want to get conservation in the ground. So yes, that's the thing is strange bedfellows indeed. And I'm all about it. I'm just like, let's just do this.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on. I hope that you will come on again.
Would love to.
And we'll get more into some things.
Next time with margaritas.
Next time we'll book it for 3 hours. We'll just shut down the podcast studio and it'll be the Ruth afternoon.
It'll be so amazing.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well,
and
thanks
we will
for
bring
listening.
margaritas.
Happy hour. Happy hour with Ruth.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Thanks for joining.
Yep. Thank you.